smelling it. Yeah. Welcome one.
Alcohol.
Welcome all. We are live on Very Flow Upstream number 104. Every 52 episodes, it kind of marks our milestone for the year. So this makes it 2 years for us, which is awesome. It's kind of crazy to think. I remember our first episode, we were like, making some really bad jokes about BlackBerry being the father of the modern smartphone, and it's almost worth rehashing because BlackBerry is still kind of that OG smartphone form factor. I guess, Palm doesn't quite count in this whole scenario, but I want to introduce our awesome guests that we have on today. We've got Brandon Orr representing Canada. How you doing, man?
What's up? Everything's going well. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Respects. I'm not a father, so I don't get those respects. But
He's the father of an application called Penguin. You can find it in
there you
BlackBerry
go.
World. We also have another father of a native BlackBerry 10 app over in Buffalo. How you doing there, Alex?
Pretty good. Just been trying to enjoy the day. Had a breakfast with part of the family, and then I had dinner with the other part of the family. So I've been a little bit hectic, but we're here now. Time to relax. Well, kinda. So
We also have Blaze. How you doing? Editor-in-chief over there at Crackberry.
I can't say that I can't complain because Alex will make fun of me, so I'm just chilling, Good. I'm a father, so all my kids wish me happy Father's Day and stuff today, so
Yeah.
I'm all good.
It's funny because like Blaze and I right now are basically the daddies of our own individual like website, so to speak. So one way or another, we're gonna partake in the day. It is Downstream for us, and if you don't know what Downstream is, this is our annual kind of on-air drinking game. I mean, first rule, of course, is going to be always drink responsibly. If you are going to participate along in the action here, as Alex, Brandon, and I will be, just make sure you're drinking responsibly. Don't be drinking, driving, and listening to Upstream. I can barely do 2 of those things, let alone 3. So, always, viewer discretion is advised. These episodes get really silly sometimes, especially toward the end. So keep all of that in mind as you listen on. Basically, the rules are simple. We're going to be imbibing.
Also,
what we hear. Yeah, Brandon.
Also, if we give any advice like on stocks or anything during this episode, just don't listen to it. Don't listen to it at all.
Did you get some hate mail from last week or something?
No. Luckily not.
Luckily, we turned Brandon's alias off so that we don't get those anymore. Here are the rules of the game. We are going to be imbibing when the on-air crew, which is us, basically use any of the key trigger words that we hate and never ever say on Upstream, which would be the Astonishing Tribe, things of that nature. Shout out to Darius Stokes. Definitely. We make any curses or swears. We use the word prosumer because that's the most buzziest word there is. IoT, which is like the next buzziest. And then it gets a little bit difficult, the words Android, iPhone, and Windows. So cheers to you guys because I just said all of those. So we'll go ahead.
Cheers.
Cheers to the Upstream crew.
Android's probably going to be the most complicated one.
Now I have to drink
Yes.
again, Blaze. Wow.
yes, it will be.
We're going to call it not a fruit OS. That'll be easier, right?
So what's everybody around the table drinking here?
Oh boy.
I'll start. I guess I'll start off. I'm drinking some Crown Royal whiskey. Gotta be calorie conscious, guys. So, I'm not on the beer today.
Alex, what about you, man? You got some whiskey too, or?
I'm one of those lame people that I don't drink very often, so I have some like leftover Michelob Ultra in the fridge. So really nothing special, and I don't want to hear it from any of you. So move on to James.
I'm sure they will get you in the chat. Alex, I'm drinking America's oldest Yingling. It's very near and dear to my heart.
Oh.
Every year I rep Yingling on these downstreams. Last time I ended up in a pool on last downstream. That's not going to happen this time. I'm going to try to keep it on the level so we can keep this podcast going in a productive direction. But I want to start on our topic list. We have 2 carriers in the United States that have received a beta update, beta access really, from BlackBerry into the Marshmallow test for PRIV devices. This is T-Mobile and AT&T. Now I have a whole side story about the T-Mobile piece, but Alex, I know you and I have been going back and forth like wanting this update. Do you have it on your PRIV now? Was it difficult to get into the beta? Tell us a little bit about that whole experience for you and whether or not your device is on Marshmallow and whether you're liking it.
Hold up,
Yes.
though. One sec. Just to make one thing perfectly clear. The T-Mobile one is actually it has moved beyond the beta stage. It's now actually public. So
Ooh. Okay. Wait,
Yeah, what operating system does it run? Just
Mm.
6.0.1, I assume.
runs
But,
the green
like
light.
what?
No, I get it, Brandon. Let's let
It runs the Googles, bro.
Dude, we're going to be slipping regardless, so there's no reason to go out of your way to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think I signed up for the beta initially when they announced it, and that was right around the time when I was having a bunch of beta zone problems logging in, so they totally reset my account. I lost everything. But I signed up for the beta, and then everyone was announcing, hey, you know, I'm in the beta. Darius installs it. Everyone in the group's like installing it. I'm like, wait, what about me? Couldn't find it. I was able to contact them, and then they put me in because I think I was already in the beta. I just never got it pushed to me. Installed it. Oh man, the download took forever, but it's been running well. Some of the problems that I was having before, so for instance, you know how I complain a lot about driving with Google Maps and listening to Google Play Music, and then like say getting a phone call, my phone just like destroying itself. That doesn't happen as frequently anymore. The overheating isn't as bad. Doesn't seem to happen as frequently now, especially when charging. Everything's a little bit more fluid. I'm not having as many problems. It doesn't feel, but it's it doesn't like make my phone amazing all of a sudden, but it definitely is running a bit better. I think they fixed some of the bugs that were in the old operating system. Lollipop.
What about like performance-wise? I know there were some lags and stutters when you were doing like basic things. Yeah, I don't know why you exaggerated lollipop.
Yeah, what was that?
Because I get nervous. Like I'm thinking, like
you should drink just for doing that, man. Like,
Android lollipop. Jesus, I was trying to not say that
man.
word. That's why I said it like an idiot. But yeah, I think it's running better overall, and yeah, I think it's running better overall. But you know, it's easy to say that too right when things are installed. One big thing I noticed though was I was totally out of storage space, and it wouldn't even let me update. So I had to clear all of the app cache, which was like 5 gigabytes or something crazy, and then once I updated, like I noticed that I only had like 3 gigabytes free, so I barely got it on. I updated, and then all of a sudden I had 8 gigabytes free. So it must have wiped out some junk files and things like that I had on Lollipop that like didn't matter. So I was happy about that. Now I have more free storage and things.
It deleted all of your nudes, Alex.
Oh damn!
Yep, that's what actually happened. No, I'm glad you're enjoying Marshmallow. I know it's one of those things for me that's a little bit bittersweet, not just because it's a marshmallow, but because we waited so long, like, you know, and really it wasn't that long, but it felt like forever for us to get this update. I'm on the side where I'm really, really enjoying it on my device. I was surprised that it ironed out a lot of just the weird little inefficiencies that I was experiencing in terms of battery life. That was a big one for me. Like, battery life just went tremendously up. And I don't know what it is, because I'm on my phone pretty heavily. Like, when I'm using it, the screen is on for a long time. So DOS wouldn't
I noticed that too.
Would really play much of a factor when you're using your phone quite a bit, but I still am getting much better battery life, at least 1 to 2 extra hours of screen on time, and I was barely getting like 3 out of the Priv, and now I'm getting 4 or 5 pretty regularly, which I think is awesome. I think the refinements are pretty good. Blaze, I know you've loaded it on some of your devices. Now that the T-Mobile one has actually been pushed out fully to users, do you think it's going to be a boon for Priv sales? Is that going to help them kind of bridge that gap towards September and where they're trying to head for device sales?
Well, I don't know if it's going to help Priv sales unless there's another direct push from T-Mobile at some point. But because we saw T-Mobile who basically took it off of their website and no longer offer it, really.
Yeah, I'm going to get to my T-Mobile story.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if it, like I said, I don't know if it's going to be a boon to the sales, but I'm pretty sure that there are at least some people out there who, basically saw that it was running Lollipop and wouldn't even consider it at that point. So I'm sure that there's some that would go back and be like, oh, well, now it's running Marshmallow, maybe I'll pick it up, especially with all of the discounts and stuff like that have been happening recently, especially with the AT&T beta, because now now that it's in beta status, all those AT&T devices that were sold are essentially applicable to the beta, and the beta is a great indication that AT&T is going to push it out eventually, right? So anybody who was holding off on possibly purchasing, one of those AT&T ones that are being sold for cheap, something to go ahead and reevaluate now that you know that that Marshmallow is essentially just around the corner. Plus, it helps all of those people who may have skipped out on it just simply because it wasn't running Marshmallow. So I don't expect a huge boom, but some people are going to go ahead and see that as an opportunity and a reason to go ahead and pick one up.
Brandon, you know that feeling we got when BB 10.3 rolled around and everything kind of felt right with the world? Almost like BB 10 should have launched on 10.3. That's how it feels on Priv with Marshmallow. It feels like the Priv, this is the software that was meant to be on it, you know? Like it just, everything seems a little more cohesive, everything's a little bit less janky, and it just feels right. And I feel like it's a good juxtaposition only because BB 10 and Marshmallow now are almost feature parity in a lot of aspects. The instant notifications to a degree, as well the application permissions, which is a big thing on Marshmallow. Alex and I had to do some crazy legwork to get Now on Tap working for my Google Apps for Work account, but we were able to get that working too. So a lot of really small refinements akin to what we saw on 10.3. 2 and above. It's interesting because really 10.3. Up really was even more significant in this Marshmallow update in terms of bringing on new features. I know we're kind of still waiting for 10.3.3. Is that something you're like looking forward to having on your device, or it really isn't crossed your mind at all?
I think I've said it previously. As a prosumer, I am kind of looking forward to the device update for 10.3.3.
Alex must have totally missed that drop there. Wow.
No, in reality, like I've mentioned before, it really does make a difference to me. It's nice to see that the Android ecosystem is embracing some of the things we've enjoyed on BlackBerry 10. I mean, it's just a matter of time before they got that into Android, because it's, I mean, like anything, when you're such a prominent operating system, especially with IoT and everything coming out now, you want to pick the best features from BlackBerry and things of that nature. So,
oh my God!
In reality,
I don't see you over there drinking. You gotta stop talking.
I'm gonna drink it all after I'm done my little spiel here. No, but in reality, like it's like I've said before, 10.3.3, it's nice that it's kind of a nod to the people who have the operating system. I have the sense, and I'm willing to be proven wrong on this, but I have the sense it's more to do with cleaning up loose ends in the back end and in the operating system in terms of security and some of that bread and butter kind of.
Have you been drinking, Brandon? Bread and brother, what?
Bread and butter, yeah. And but in reality, I mean, as you see now with the Android getting that feature parity, if you guys start, I mean, it can't go unnoticed. If you guys are starting to feel like it's almost getting to that point, I'm sure there's a lot of incentive for BlackBerry to say, okay, this is an optimal moment to kind of shift over and go hardcore in the consumer space in Android and kind of leave it at that.
And we know too that the chipset in these devices are not very good. Just the Snapdragon versions of this year and everything. So I am looking forward to future devices because from what I hear, they're at least running better. Even if they're lower specs, they're actually running smoother than the Priv. Because I mean, let's be serious here. Like it was not a good year for processors or Snapdragon, Qualcomm. It's not a good year for that. The year that the Priv came out. So.
I find it kind of funny, as we compare, because we're always seemingly getting last year's specs anyway, to a degree, right? Yeah. And I think there's always going to be that kind of compromise that you play between the price that's not only going to come on the silicon that you got to buy, but also, building in your own hardware root of trust, so you've got your encryption keys and everything. That all adds on to those costs, right? So going with the 808 versus an 810 or something like that, or of course now we have like the 820s and more to come. It's really going to be an interesting place to see, as they go forward, where these mid-range devices are going to go. Very much like with what we saw on the mid-range kind of BlackBerry 10 devices, right? They all ran the very similar processor line because it was something reliable that they had worked on. So hopefully
Yeah.
we can kind of get into a place where it's a little bit more saturated in that aspect.
Yeah, but like it's one of those things I've mentioned before. I mean, trying to get into that flagship kind of marketplace. To be honest, most people who have an Android device, when you're looking at developers, the type of apps they're developing, they're not developing apps for the most powerful device out there. They're developing apps for the most common denominator, the least common denominator, so that most people can use the application. So,
Wait, they're building apps for BlackBerry 10?
no, but I mean when it comes to Android, right? They're not looking to develop an app that can only be used on the most powerful device, right? So I think this kind of, race to the top in terms of specs is kind of a faulty one because, yeah, you need those things to kind of push the market ahead, but to be successful and to be something that consumers will want doesn't necessarily need to be at the top there. It just needs to be something that provides the features they want and can access the apps that they want, right? So it's being able to balance those two things, which I think hopefully we'll be able to see BlackBerry do over the next year, which it looks like based on the devices that we expect to come out, they might be able to do that, but who knows?
Yeah,
I don't know, man. I think the world wants high end and dirt cheap.
Yeah.
The OnePlus 3
Look
is
at the
getting a
OnePlus
lot
3.
of-
I was just gonna say, yeah.
It's getting a lot of talk.
But the funny part about it is, you have the 6 gigabytes of RAM with it, but it has memory management problems because they limit it to 10 apps at a time. So if you have a game open and then you open up 9 other apps, well, the game, resets itself when you open it back up. But you can fairly easily fix that by just rooting it, which we're never going to be able to do, and then just raise that limit. So essentially, the thought process is kind of strange because you have 6 gigabytes of RAM, which is the most any phone has, yet you're having memory management issues that it's closing apps in the background. But it's fairly easily remedied. I think they just more so did it for holy crap, 6 gigabytes of RAM, and you want that phone.
Future-proof too, right? I mean,
It needs more cowbell.
A lot of it. Yeah.
So I want to tell you guys
Baby,
about
more
my.
cowbell.
I want to tell you guys about my T-Mobile experience because
Yeah.
it was a really random kind of occurrence, and it was actually interesting to see kind of how the outcome of it all ended up, which is pretty interesting. I went into a T-Mobile store haphazardly the other day, and I walked in just because I had heard, they had removed the Priv from their stores, online at least. So I was like, is that the same case in stores? And I went to a very small, not a major, not a big corporate store, just a small kind of, corner store. Went inside. They directed me. They're like, "You guys looking for a phone?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Whoa, the Samsungs are over there. The iPhones are over there." that was it. That was their sales pitch to me, right?
That was the sales pitch.
Right.
Wow.
And it's funny because that's the same kind of pitch you're gonna get basically anywhere, right? For the most part, right? You're gonna be pointed in the direction of those two platforms. So either way, I go to their kind of third-party wall with all the other no-name brands, and there's BlackBerry's Priv, and it's there. I load it up, and there's an update already downloaded for Marshmallow. Someone just needed to press install, and that was it, right? It would have jumped to Marshmallow. Simple thing, right? Simple thing any educated retail salesperson could have done for them, or even the BlackBerry guy who comes in, every once in a while to do that stuff, if there is one in the area. Regardless, I hit the update for them. I take a picture of it, and I put it on Twitter, and I kind of laugh about it because it's one of those things where it just shows, one, there's two things, right? The device is, one, not on the latest OS, right? Which if people are going to come in and they're going to look at the Priv anyway, they're going to look to see what kind of OS it's running. And if they see it running last year's OS, they're going to be like, well, let me go get the Samsung that's running the latest, right? Or something else. The V10 is right next to it, right? So there's tons of other options in the space that are running Marshmallow, and all those devices are all updated. Everything's good to go. Priv is literally sitting there. Second thing that irked me about the whole deal was that the Priv is in a clamp case, so you can't actually slide it open, which is the only selling feature of this phone, right? That keyboard.
Wow.
And it's literally locked into place, so no one is going to wander in there and find that there's actually a physical keyboard device running Android, right? It's not something that is present and available there for anyone. And again, they're not even directing you over there to look at it. So the whole display kind of irked me, and that's why I posted this picture. When posting the picture, maybe within a couple hours, I got a DM on Twitter from Alex Thurber, who, if you don't know, is BlackBerry's new vice president of global device sales under Carl Weiss. He hit me up asking for the store location, asking for details, wanting to follow up directly. Where I don't know if that's just fan service or whatever the case may be. It is good to see that, one, they're listening, and two, they're willing to maybe at least put a little bit of effort to go touch base on those stores, because it shows that they do care about that carrier partnership and that whole carrier distribution strategy. And that was more interesting to me than calling the store or anything like that.
James, I gotta wonder. I mean, this isn't something new. We've seen this since the beginning of BlackBerry 10, when the devices were first launched, and you gotta wonder, how come salespeople have? It seems like almost there's more incentive for salespeople to sell Samsungs than to sell or iPhones than to sell other devices. And I'm wondering, is there no incentive to, because I know when there's extra stock, like a traditional company wants to get rid of stock, so they'll like a lot of companies will sell things just to get it out the door, and that way they don't have to worry about it anymore. But it almost seems like there just isn't that incentive for people to be like, okay, let's get rid of this BlackBerry, let's really try and sell and get these last 5 out, and then we can focus on these other ones and stuff, and so on and so forth. But it doesn't seem like there's those kind of
it goes back to what we
talked about.
It goes back to what we talked about last week, Brandon, where that AT&T executive or whatever is talking about sales and returns of the Priv, and a salesman is more inclined to say go with the Samsung or iPhone because you as an end user are going to go home and have less problems with it than you would with a Priv or would with an older version of an LG or whatever the case may be. It's literally the brand name that people are easy to attach onto, and then they know they're going to get less issues overall with those popular devices. So I really think it's maybe not a lack of incentive, but more of the opposite, right? There's just they get poorer results when they do try to make some of those sales, where they may get the 5 out the door, but maybe one of them comes back, and now they have to try to sell that again, potentially, right? I definitely think there could be maybe some kind of sales incentives, but how that breaks down by each region, by each carrier store is a total mystery to me. Alex, what do you think in terms of your kind of carrier sales experience when you went into an AT&T store to buy your Priv? I mean, when I first went, Priv first rolled out, there were representatives there actually using the Priv as their daily driver. When you kind of followed up and brought some more of your family on, has that reception been the same, or is it a little bit different from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, most of my family I got on right when the Priv came out, and the people in the store, like it was like the first day they even saw the Priv, and they were actually kind of interested in it, and they're like, oh, it actually seems like a good phone, I'd consider it. But now, like, just recently my aunt got her Priv, and she got that same type of lip service where it's like, you sure you want this phone? And it's like, yeah, my nephew, he's gonna help me with it, he knows the phone inside and out, whatever. And they still tried to like talk her, like, you sure you don't want like an iPhone or something? And then there's my uncle, like, you should get an iPhone, I love my iPhone. So I feel like it right when the phone came out, absolutely, but now like I don't think it's any different than any past BlackBerries. Maybe a little bit, but they'll talk about the bad front-facing camera or how it compares to a Galaxy, and there's a lot that happens when you actually go into the store. It seems like they don't.
It seems like there's like a 3-month cycle in which BlackBerry is really up there when they really hit the stores, and then all of a sudden nothing.
Yeah.
Because it's basically depending upon what actually happens in between. How many of those devices got returned? How many of them had customers call in and complain about them, or whatever the scenario may be, right? It just seems like it seems like that initial hit with a BlackBerry is very limited compared to some of the other devices that are on the market. You only have a certain amount of time to get those devices out the door, and then the quote-unquote hype is gone at that point.
Yeah, but I am seeing some people talk about like any sales that are going on with the Priv, and they're like, if that was an extra $100 cheaper than that, like I would actually make that my daily driver. But it sounds like a lot of people are tempted by the Priv, but they don't think the price is going to be fixed, and at this point they'd rather wait for a Priv 2.
And that's what I generally see on Twitter too. Like every time that we put out like a Priv sale post or even just like as a prime example, I mean, we're going to get to it here, but you know, the BlackBerry offering $100 off or $150 in Canada of the Priv for Father's Day. You know, even when that post went up, there was like feedback on Twitter. It's like it's just not enough of a discount. I would buy it if it was more of a discount, and that's unfortunate. Right?
I mean, now that BlackBerry is in the Android space, and like you look at the OnePlus 3 for $400, you can get a top-of-the-line spec phone that just came out, and you know, BlackBerry with their discounts, they're trying to still sell it for $550. So you're in the Android space, BlackBerry. Like this is people care about pricing. You can't act like you're the old BlackBerry and compete with Apple on pricing. And it's just, you know, I don't know if there's much they can really do.
I can honestly say I cannot recall a time where BlackBerry has ever nailed the pricing where it was like, yes.
No. They nailed it when the playbook first came out. I mean, that was
yeah. Whatever, bro.
We should be able to drink for playbook too, cause like RIP, man.
You know what? We have one of our writers, Matthew, did a really good post on tablets that I'm going to be posting tomorrow. So I'm going to hold my tongue on that one because he made some really good points. But you know, it is one of those things that Blaze is right. Right, the pricing on these devices has always been a little bit off, but you're also never going to satisfy everyone, and you have to make money at the end of the day. I think right now, going high and being able to reduce over time is better than coming in low and just never hitting the volume that you need to even make it profitable. That's more of a waste than this strategy is now, in my opinion.
I don't know, man. Like, sometimes I just think that BlackBerry would be better off just coming in actually low for once, and at that point you're kind of like surprising people. Like, I don't know. I think with their initial,
they can shock the market and actually get their name back out there. Like, they should look at this as an opportunity for advertising more so. I mean, not more so, but like, look, instead of just how much money are we making on each phone, let's look at this as like an entire advertising effort here, marketing and advertising. Like, you guys were back in the game. Check our phone out. It's affordable. Get people on it. And like
especially with the first Android device. Like, I know we've all defended the pricing to a certain point with Priv as well, and I know there's a lot that goes into it. I'm not saying that there isn't, and I know at the end of the day, BlackBerry needs to go ahead and make a profit off of these devices. But you know, just to be able to come in a little bit lower than expectations, to be able to go ahead and like Alex said, shock the market with, you know, something that is good and affordable would be absolutely insane for them to go ahead and do that. Because, again, it goes back to what I was saying about BlackBerry has never come in lower than the expectation, right, on their pricing. So if they had arrived with the Priv being their first Android device at a lower price point, I think it would have benefited them in the long run because it would have sold more in volume at that point. But who knows? I mean, that's realistically just guesswork by me. But I don't know, man. It
makes sense. But the funny point too is like everyone could blame it on volume as well. Like Samsung's probably getting better prices for buying how many screens they're buying, for instance. But the ironic part is like Samsung is selling their phones like crazy, like at crazy prices, top of the line tier prices. So like they're probably making even more of a margin from this sale of the phone than BlackBerry is, because they're just getting bulk discounts.
There's still even a large volume of users out there who, had they known about the Priv, because so many still don't, would buy it. You know, even at the high price or even at the $550, right? There's so many people who just don't even know that they're so uneducated. They don't even know it's an option, right? And even Passport, right? It started at a really good price, I think, when it first launched. And then that still, right, it hit a slump after a while because there was no more education of the market as to what these devices were, whether they existed. Now, as I've been going through kind of Crackberry forums, Blaze, maybe you can back this up, but I've been seeing a lot of people posting like, hey, I saw a Priv ad in a very like focused way, like on a political, you know, on a political gambit on a Toronto's game or whatever the case may be, seeing some targeted marketing. So that marketing is happening. I don't want to say that it's not happening at all, right? There are people who are seeing adverts for the Priv. It's just, again, such a focused, consolidated effort. So,
and I honestly don't know what the rhyme or reason is to that actual programming because, I mean, I don't see any ads for the Priv, but these, you know, watching the political debates and stuff like that, like we've noticed that for pretty much ever since the Priv has launched, that they went on Good Morning America, whatever. They basically started with like the Democratic debates, and they had like the brought to you by BlackBerry. Like, yeah, they've done some marketing. They probably have done more marketing for the Priv than what they have ever done for the Passport or anything like that at this point in time, when you put it into a grand perspective. But
Yes.
it's not something that it doesn't seem as though that it's like on a broader scale. It seems like it's very targeted and possibly even regional. I mean,
Absolutely.
you know, and we it's no secret that regional marketing is a little bit cheaper, right? Like, you can buy an ad in Kansas and have it air locally in Kansas, like, for dirt cheap, but you can't buy an ad in New York for the exact same price, right? So I would love to see the metrics on where it is that they're purchasing this ad content, and how much it's actually costing them, and where it's being specifically targeted to. Because at this point, it's not, like James said, it's not really fair to say that they're not doing marketing, because they are doing some marketing. It's just that it doesn't seem to be on a grand scale in which everybody notices it.
Getting to some of our other news, as leading right off of this, we have BlackBerry's annual earnings call that they're going to be doing. This one is for Q1 2017, is that correct? And that is on Wednesday, June the 22nd. So in terms of, how much are they spending on marketing, we may actually get a little bit of insight into that come the earnings call. Now, Blaze, this is a little bit different from BlackBerry. They're actually holding their shareholder meeting and webcast before the earnings call. Is that anything to be worried about?
No. They basically have done that for, well, let's back up a bit, okay?
That was a leading question for sure.
Yeah, BlackBerry annual special meeting webcast that is held on January 22nd. That's basically the annual general meeting of shareholders, right? It's where they go through all the processes, and they vote the new board members, all that crap, right? That's all basic stuff. Like, people wouldn't. It was kind of funny, because when we put the post up on Crackberry, everybody's like, "Oh, annual and special meeting. What does this mean?" It doesn't mean anything. It means that it's the AGM that they have always had for years upon years. They just changed the name, and really they changed it like 2 or 3 years ago. It just shows up as BlackBerry annual and special meeting, and that's it.
But it's
still the AGM, right?
Wouldn't you want to hear the results and then have a meeting, though? I feel like that's a little bit more conducive to a...
Yeah, and the actual earnings call is the next day, and this is where I think a lot of people get confused, because I honestly cannot recall a time when the AGM was actually before the earnings call. They're usually on the exact same day,
right?
Because that's just how it has essentially always been, as far back as I can remember. Somebody can prove me wrong, more power to you, but I cannot recall a time in which they were on separate days. Again, the annual and special meeting isn't anything really special. It's just the AGM that they generally always have alongside the Q1 earnings call for the year. But I can't recall a time in which they've actually had them set on separate days. Maybe it's just a scheduling issue. Maybe it's something different. I don't know. But
what
we'll
would
find
be
out.
interesting is if during the AGM they actually do what John Chen does, which is like either show devices or talk about devices, make a lot of noise over here day one, so that day two we can slide in some, potentially earnings,
That thought crossed my mind as well, because I think it was during one of the AGMs that he actually showed off the Passport and the Classic, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that was sort of like hype at that point in time. But again, that was on the exact same day as the earnings call, so I don't know.
That was after, maybe they're learning, right? Again, if they can get some good news out ahead of time to kind of soften the blow, maybe this earnings call will not be hailed as another, because you know how the media is going to take to any numbers that are BlackBerry related, good or bad, will be
they're
bad.
Instantly bad, no matter what, right?
Regardless.
We all know that. It really depends on the person looking at it. You can either pull out the good or you can pull out the bad, and unfortunately, the majority of the people always pull out the bad. But I don't know. It's going to be an interesting occasion when they do the annual special meeting. and then the earnings call. Unfortunately, it's going to be a rough 2 days if both situations turn out to be bad.
I think really we're just going to see more of the same, right? We saw them hit a really good number for their software revenues. We obviously expect that to keep continuing. And it's really just a point right now where I think the expectations are a little bit low, and if they can reset them and kind of level things out, I think it's going to make a lot of sense for people. We've also been kind of waiting to hear about this roadmap, right? Well, John Chen said we're going to show our roadmap when we are ready. Well, when are you going to be ready? It's been 6 months, right? Getting a little bit of insight into what the kind of long-term play is makes sense for developers. It helps the investors, and as well the general media and the journalists out there understand kind of where BlackBerry's direction is, so that when they're writing whatever they're writing, they've got a little bit more understanding and foundation as to what the actual vision is. Because right now it's been pretty aimless, right? A lot of us are here shooting and guessing at where BlackBerry is, where they're going, what the game plan is. So maybe seeing some of that stuff line up here through June and into July with the security summit, it definitely leaves some potential for maybe some kind of device announcement. Maybe this AllTouch we've been hearing about, maybe something else. I would be interested to just see some movement on BlackBerry Radar. It came out, we heard nothing else since. I'd love to see a demo, see some case study, something, right, about that IoT initiative. I guess I got to drink to that one, guys. But in some other news,
all I got to say is more power to the person who asks where BlackBerry 10.3.3 is.
Oh,
hey,
boy.
The fact that it's even out in a developer version says something, right? That Crackberry unearthed, by the way. I love that Crackberry posted, and the next day BlackBerry's like, oh, damn, we got to put a blog post out about it. Let's go do that. So that Brandon and Alex can update their freaking apps.
Yep, that's what we're waiting for.
Yeah, that's what I'm waiting for, man.
You're also waiting. Never mind. That's just cool.
I'm waiting for BlackBerry to show its hand.
In other smaller
things.
news, we saw BlackBerry named as a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for EMM suites. Good accolade to have, at least being on the leaderboard, so to speak, in terms of their EMM platform. Always good, right? You just made a massive acquisition of one of your competitors. You should have an excellent, leading position in this market. And Gartner is one of a giant analytics firm that looks at all of these things and trends. So good to see that they're kind of putting their, their notch into what BlackBerry's got as well. We're seeing why the largest medical device manufacturers are relying on QNX. Those are two posts that you can find on Crackberry for more details about the press releases and the different bits of information. When talking really about the QNX Medical, the blowout was awesome. It was like an entire hospital, and how QNX can help from the ambulance to the to the bedside, to the machinery, to the inter-office communications. Really, really cool potentials. I would love to see more of BlackBerry pushing the envelope in that space. Brandon, what about you? Do you think that there is more of a niche for BlackBerry to start carving in the medical field? I know we've seen them go after kind of like the very regulated industries, but even their whole stack of security and enterprise stuff in terms of productivity could really help in a market. But it's almost like you got to educate that market as to what the potentials are, right? A lot of these types of technological implementations are just not in the medical space right now.
Yeah, man. Like honestly, I think the world's their oyster. They just gotta hone in on what they want to do. Like we've mentioned before, they gotta hone in and say, look, this is the path we want to go forward. This is the path we're gonna do. I think right now, it's just kind of all up in the air, and they just. When you talk about the medical field, yeah, of course they have a lot of opportunities, and they can carve a niche out there through. Other integration with some other products that they're doing through the IoT space and things of that nature. But I mean, it's the same thing we've been saying for the past year and a half. Really, is we can talk about it all we want, and we can say, yeah, they can carve out a niche, but we haven't really.
Launch is done.
Yeah, the launch is done. Yeah, exactly. But we haven't really seen them quite do that to this point. So in terms of, yeah, sure, they can carve out a niche, but whether they can actually, get it together and follow through on that, it's a lot harder than just simply willing it, right? And I think the only thing we can see is if they do then in the future. It's kind of hard because, and you guys can talk to this point, but they have to they have to work their partners pretty hard to get devices in the hands of medical professionals, and like they've been doing with Nat Health and things like that. But it's not like we complain about retailers and telcos in the U.S. not wanting to sell their devices. At the same time, you're working with an even different range of sellers. In the telco space, you only have like maybe a handful of people you really need to focus on in one country. But when you talk about the healthcare space, there's a whole bunch of different providers, and you really got to work on all those different partnerships to carve that out. And it's a difficult process.
Why they're ramping up all of their distribution channels right now. Like we've seen, even though it doesn't necessarily go towards like the medical stuff, the enterprise and the software side, they've focused on India at this point, and those particular announcements are going to continue because that was one of the things that they wanted to essentially go ahead and expand upon, was all of their distribution channels. And that, as boring and as droll as it is, and those press releases are really not that interesting.
I didn't even put HCL on the topic list. That's how boring.
Yeah, I mean, it really does matter at the end of the day, because those partnerships and those relationships and those distribution channels are what basically help BlackBerry move forward. And as we've said about many topics, it's just one of those things. It's not sexy enough.
But BlackBerry is at its core, at its root, they're a B2B company, and like I've been realizing so much more than ever. Like I have clients who they advertise business to consumer, and their advertising efforts are way different than mine. Like I'm totally a B2B company, and for me to get a new client, I have to network and introduce myself and sell on my service, and then boom, you trust me and now you buy from me. So BlackBerry,
you have to sell yourself. I'm sorry, Alex.
I mean, the thing is, like, I think BlackBerry's good at the B2B side of things, and all that we see is they suck at B2C, which makes sense. It's not that often that a company is fully focused on B2B and fully focused on B2C. Normally you pick one and you focus your efforts there. So I guess it's not overly...
What's B2C, bro?
Oh, sorry. Business to consumer. So essentially, the average consumer, the average buyer, the average phone buyer, that would be B2C. So when you're selling a phone to the average person, that's B2C. But when you're selling your phone to enterprise or bulk phones or BYOD, that's B2B. That's business to business. And that's what BlackBerry is good at. That's what they have experience in. So it's not overly surprising that their advertising sucks, because that's a function that they don't have that much history with.
They're not advertising to consumers.
Yeah.
And it really brings back a point for us to kind of dig into that, and it parlays right off of Brandon's point as well, that I don't even know if it's a marketing issue so much as it is like a public relations issue, or even just a PR issue in general, where if BlackBerry had more feelers out, as Brandon mentioned, they'd be able to work on some of their partners and work them a little bit better so that they could get them marketing for them. And that is kind of like what Alex is doing, right? Where you're introducing, you're networking, you're selling yourself. Well, if you could have your partners doing that for you, your reach is even greater. But again, a lot of work, and I think really the interpersonal skills and the salesmanship of BlackBerry's enterprise teams to broaden that kind of horizon outside of the B2B and have the businesses marketing for them is that next step that they really need to take. But they have to have superior solutions to have that word of mouth really carry them forward,
I just partnered up with a CRM company, and they told me within the partnership agreement, it says I need to advertise their company. Like, part of me being a partner to them, I have to, in my advertising, I need to be talking about their CRM. So no different than like BlackBerry, when you build partners, you expect your partners to push your product and actually spend ad dollars on that. So BlackBerry is maybe thinking, we're not going to spend that much of our ad dollars. We're gonna teach you how to implement this and how to sell this, and you will sell it, but we'll give you a good enough commission that makes worth your while. And that's the way that it's done in the B2B world, business to business world. So it's just different.
Totally different. And we're really not here to solve all of BlackBerry's problems. Just pick them apart for you all listening.
We're not problem solvers.
We have something called the after show where we actually supply those answers.
Some types of, yeah.
We did a survey last week to close Upstream. Alex and I had a good conversation about, moving to SoundCloud, how the podcast is growing, changing, and we really wanted to get user feedback. So I'm going to actually pull up this survey because we had some of the results come through. And Alex, if you'll take us through some of these results, explain kind of what we gathered from it and what we're hoping to, glean out of the message. It's really interesting. A lot of it was kind of right on point with what we expected, what we assumed already, but it was interesting and nice to see. Alex is pulling it up on this end. As you see at the top, we got 52 unique responses on this survey. So it was really a kind of wide range of responses that we got on each individual item. And Alex, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, so the main thing here is the majority of people are interested in BlackBerry news from week to week, which not surprising, but it's at least good to get some validation of that because we do go in talking about some other stuff too, and if everyone's like, we don't care about BlackBerry news, why are you guys even talking about it? That would be a problem. So it's kind of one of those dummy questions we put in there, but it's good to see that most people feel that way about it. And then the second question, which we have the 69.2% response rate to, again, this is about BlackBerry. So
you should have to drink for that 69 reference, I'm thinking.
People are interested in technology discussions relating to BlackBerry products and services. So people do like us focusing on BlackBerry. And then the next one, which with a 30% response rate, this is just interested in general technology discussion. So it's not the majority of you who are interested when we start talking. Sometimes we'll be talking about BlackBerry and we'll lean in and maybe talk a little bit about Google. I don't want to say the A word. So we don't have to drink and things, but we do go into some other technology, and it seems some people do like that, but it's not the majority. And then the last thing in terms of that, without getting a little bit off the beaten path, is people are interested where BlackBerry stands in the market compared to the competitors. So half of you guys, you are interested to see how BlackBerry compares in enterprise, and I guess you could say, Samsung, Galaxy, like these, they're technically competitors to the Priv and things. So maybe I could have actually focused that down a bit more. Are you interested in the enterprise side of things or not? But we'll get into that question in a second, which is actually pretty interesting.
Not to cut you off here, Alex. What that tells me is that what we're doing so far is pretty focused in terms of what people want. And I think it's really interesting to take a look at the fact that some of our other answers here, enjoying the cast personalities, came in at a higher rating than an interest in, some of the technology discussions are related to BlackBerry products and services. Yeah. So to a degree, it's interesting to see that people are a little bit more interested in how we carry the show as opposed to really the content of what we're talking about to a degree. Yeah, another thing here, I really appreciate everyone who voted on enjoying James making fun of Alex. I appreciate
30%, I could live with it. Hey, 70% of you guys don't like it. I'm going to take it that you guys didn't vote for it because you hate it and it makes you mad. So at least I get the majority there. It feels
Another
good.
piece here, we have some that are just looking for Blaze to slip up and drop some insider information too. So that's always good. And then other, I don't really know what other is, but good for you. Alex, tell us about what topics our Upstream listeners are most interested in.
This was interesting. I can't say it was overly surprising, though, because I think we kind of started assuming this at the very least. So the topic of discussion, is it more consumer product services or enterprise product services? 96.1% you guys are interested in the consumer side of things, the things that BlackBerry is actually kind of moving away from, which is a little bit it's difficult on our end. So imagine you want us to primarily talk about BlackBerry, but you want us to talk about the consumer side of BlackBerry. Well, that's tough for us. That's a very segmented. That's a segment of a segment, So it's difficult.
Basically, the past 20 minutes that we discussed, nobody cares about.
Yeah. But that is the week in BlackBerry news, so we are at least talking about that. James mentioned for. Yeah, no, go ahead.
It's a good mention too that we are the consumer interest of so it's like when we talk about our experiences with the Passport, BBM, Priv, whatever the case may be, even when we stray to the conversations about EMM and all of those other things, our opinions, what 40% of our listeners appreciated in our personalities comes to the fact that we are consumers of those products and services that are BlackBerry related. So it adds a relation point for our listeners as well, that we are very much like you, because if we were to take this survey, we also would be on that 96.1% as well. I know Blaze is. Blaze almost falls asleep half of these podcasts anyways because we're talking about EMM and all this crap with NVM
IoT and stuff and things of that nature.
Oh gosh, what else do we have here? This one was a little bit interesting to me. Are you aware that Upstream is broadcast live? Like right now, we are on the live show. So when I sneeze on air or when Brandon drops his headphones, this is a live show. When Blaze shows his face, that is Blaze in real life.
Yeah. So I mean, 92.3%. That is a pretty good percentage, honestly. Yeah. That means that we do these. Probably, I think a lot of the people that responded to this are probably some of the more loyal people anyway. So it's not too surprising. But for those of you listening right now in the replay, assuming. Definitely check out berryflow.com/live. I mean, we're here every Sunday at 8 p.m. for the most part. I mean, it's Father's Day and we're doing this, so we've been pretty consistent.
No matter how you look at it, right?
This is like longer than most of my relationships, so kudos to us.
Yep.
As well, we have our our crowdfunding campaign. This is really again going deep into some of our diehard users. A lot of them appreciate the private BBM channel that we have, the access to the Upstream after show, which we're going to get on. We're going to be talking about, if I remember, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Blaze's post about what apps we'd like added to the hub, and I'm sure that's going to be a cascading conversation for us in the after show.
Yes.
Opportunities to Joe in the after show as a guest is something we're also doing. So it was really interesting to see what other features people would like. I thought was amusing as well. Someone asked exclusive wallpapers. Yes, if you go to our Patreon blog and scroll through, there are multiple wallpapers designed by Pooter Mobile specifically for you guys.
One of the interesting suggestions here is a condensed Upstream, maybe a 10-minute version. And James, didn't you kind of do that with Jubei a while back?
Yeah, we did Conduit, and it just takes so much more producing time, and it's really you want to make an even higher quality show. If Jubei and I were in the same locality, I mean, we could do it, and it would be amazing and consistent. So that is something as we continue to grow, it's something we may take a look at because I definitely can appreciate a 10-minute quick dirty show. You move on with your life. More penetration to BlackBerry user groups is something I personally took to heart because that made a lot of sense, right? We have this private BBM channel, but that may not be the best place for social engagement. So maybe a BBM group for our patrons is a good idea where you can interact in a more direct way with us and the other patrons. So that was good for me.
We can always do we can honestly do like a Slack channel or something a little bit more closed off, but maybe more wider open. And I think that could actually be interesting. But there are a few different options we can do.
It's got to be a BBM channel because Slack isn't universal.
It is. You could go on a computer. You could do it on your phone. If you guys are on Android, yeah, I mean, you have to rig it to get on BB10. Yeah, but I mean, there are other areas because right now, just having BBM on the phone, that's your only choice right now. But yeah,
free Nike running shoes. Yeah, you better be kidding. Red passport? Like, what is this?
Oh, to be daily basis. All right, come on now. Like we spend an hour plus every Sunday, and we run out of things to talk about. Yeah, we somehow don't. Can you imagine? Oh, I'm sorry. We
just talk about like the news of the day.
Daily.
Today, Crackberry has a sale on Q10 cases.
Yeah.
But thank you for the suggestion.
Tips on how to get Android apps working on BB10. It's almost a foregone conclusion at this point.
Look, man, I got a Crackberry forums link, and that's all you need to know. Anything beyond that, just ask in the forums.
Right. Someone will send it to you. How did you find out about Upstream was another interesting tidbit here, right? This was talking a little bit about where the viewership's coming. A lot of people coming from Crackberry over. So, again, thank you to Blaze for joining us on this podcast, kind of widening the gaze of support here. Berryflow, people coming direct. Some from the podcast app, social media, and as well other. So go other category, rocking at the 9.4%. Really what this ends up telling us is that there is a broader base of things that we can work on and tailor to make sure the show is something that you continue to want to see. We know as BlackBerry changes, we don't want to stray too far away, but we do also want to broaden the discussion a little bit as the podcast continues to grow. there's more to talk about the connected world in terms of IoT. Oh, where's my beer? Connected automobiles, and it is really important to understand that BlackBerry is migrating to be a software entity. So to not talk about that would be a little bit dishonest to what BlackBerry truly is, right? We can come here and speculate for an hour plus about, the various things that BlackBerry may or may not be doing on the consumer side, but to really deliver a valuable dialogue to you so that you can track every week, we got to talk a little bit about the boring stuff. And we'll try to jazz it up as much as we can, try to make it a little bit interesting. Or as we did today, just kind of run over it as quickly as we can.
I think that's a crucial point to basically go ahead and let users know. It's something that everybody knows already, but it's a good reminder is that BlackBerry themselves are evolving at this point, and just like everybody else who listens to Upstream, we're kind of like basically flowing along with them as well. And it depends on where they're going and where they take us. So the conversations are always going to revolve around BlackBerry, and it depends upon what they're doing and what they're putting out there and what we can essentially go ahead and discuss, because if things change, then we have to adapt the conversation as well, right?
Yeah.
And whoever said Alex is hot in the survey, I appreciate that so much. You just made my day. I'm dead. Brandon just
Alex is wondering where he can Tinder up these people.
Hopefully they're of the female descent.
You should have included a zip code or something.
Yeah. I am dead. I am dead.
Alex is blushing.
Yeah. So just to close out
hot style.
Yeah. Alex sends me like these Snapchats of him in the morning, and it's like without a shirt on. And I'm like, this is not what I want. I'm sure one of our Upstream support people would love to see this. So send me your Snapchat. I'll screenshot it and send it out to you, I guess. Not that I really want to screenshot it. Do you guys use any cases on your devices at all? You guys, I know you guys seem like naked guys. Like y'all like your shit naked, but
yeah.
Blaze is like, yeah.
I don't even have pants on right now.
The only reason Blaze comes to Upstream is because he can be like butt naked while he does it and no one knows.
Why do you think my camera's never on? You're just all naked, relaxing.
Hannah in the live chat just said female descent ? To Alex.
It's a joke. Oh Lord.
Female descent. Alex actually doesn't know what he likes yet. He's still working on that.
I think I got it pretty figured out. Married to my job, and I like women.
Married to my job, but I love women. Too funny. Oh man. So just to kind of bring everything a little bit full circle, in the last year, what are some of the biggest BlackBerry bits of news that have kind of crossed the wire for you guys? For me, the move to Android actually coming after like months and months and months of hearing about it, to me was some of the biggest news that happened this past year. What did you guys think that was like something that was a little bit kind of left field from BlackBerry that really you never thought they would go do?
I don't think anybody can top the whole Android move. I mean, it seemed logical. I mean, it's been something that essentially has been talked about for many, many years. As soon as BlackBerry introduced the Android player, at that point in time, there was rumors about them going directly to Android at some point, right? Like, it was almost a given to some people when that happened. But, I mean, personally, I mean, I agree with you, James, 110%. Like, the move to Android was probably the most shocking. Not unexpected, but it's still shocking.
I'm actually going to take a different turn on this. I think the most shocking thing that happened in the last year was the Good acquisition when they purchased.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Good,
Definitely.
because I remember before that they had put out all these blog posts saying that Good isn't good enough. They were just like chirping them hard on the blog, right? And a few months later,
back checks.
And then a few months later they purchased them, and it's like.
Alex said it perfectly. They were talking down their valuation so they could afford it.
And I mean that essentially was their biggest acquisition. So
yeah,
I mean, from your perspective, I agree
think
with that.
For me, one of the things that was like most left field was BlackBerry Radar asset tracking BlackBerry on cargo boxes, basically whole new BlackBerry hardware division, right? I mean, this is a whole side of the business that basically takes the innards of a smartphone and now attaches it to the back of cargo for, trucks, boats, planes. That was something really interesting and a very visible, kind of clear-cut idea for IoT, where they're leveraging BlackBerry's, business technology solutions and things of that nature. So, for me, that's something that was, yeah, right. It was something that for me that really was like, oh, that's cool. That's BlackBerry kind of making a good step in the right direction, right? That for
I just
me
want to hear more about it.
I asked for pictures. They don't have them. I think it's vaporware right now. Who knows? I think they're testing it. They just can't say who's testing it. No one's agreed to be like, yes, we're using BlackBerry Radar to please find our assets out there and steal them. Like no one wants to come out and be like, yeah, we're using it. It's not something you talk about really.
No, it's more of an internal. They'll talk like business people will talk to other business people like, hey, we just set this up and it's working out well, but it's it's not. It's a different market. You're not.
Yeah, man. Like I'd have to go to a trucking show, basically just to be able to go ahead and find information about that one segment of BlackBerry. Which I mean, who's going to do that, right? I mean, unless you're directly related to that industry. That's a costly job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just me speaking as Crackberry, I'm not going to go to a trucking show just to be able to go ahead and see if I can get my hands on BlackBerry Radar, right? Unless I was specifically like invited there and they, had like a broad scope of things that they were going to be able to go ahead and demonstrate or show off at that point.
What's up, guys? It's Blaze from Crackberry here at the automotive show.
I guess
it would be kind of cool, though. I'm not saying I'm not willing to go. I'll go. I got all kinds of trucker hats.
Blaze is like, just hit up my inbox, y'all. Send me the invites. We'll be there. So
I have a question about the BlackBerry Radar. Do you think it was actually something that BlackBerry developed and like they actually built the modules themselves, or is it kind of one of those things they just acquired from another company and then now it's just got a BlackBerry label on it?
So I want to get back to that right after we hear Alex's tidbit about what was his favorite BlackBerry news, because that's a more prolonged discussion maybe for our after show. I think it's a little bit more appropriate. But Alex, close it out here for us, man. What was some of the biggest news of this year for you in terms of BlackBerry?
Realistically, the fact that they went back to like their Torch, the sliding mechanism kind of phone, I really didn't think they were going to be doing much of that anymore. Especially we saw like the Passport. We're like, okay, they're trying to try some crazy stuff with this keyboard, but then all of a sudden we have a Priv, and more so, like when they first showed off the Priv, and we were talking about like, was that even like a real device? Like, that was a fake screen? Like that wasn't a real screen? Like how did they really achieve this, or what's going on? And the fact that now that we have the phone, when I first got the phone and I'd hand the phone to people, they did not think it had a slide-out keyboard. The fact that people did not know they were holding a phone because it was so thin that it had a slide-out keyboard, I mean, I think that was a pretty impressive feat of engineering. And yes, it does have some of its overheating problems and things like that going on here and there. But like I think they're one of the first companies that really pulled off the mechanism well. And I think that was surprising. It's something different in the market that we haven't seen.
Yeah, I agree. When Ron went out on stage and just dropped the two Privs and the slidey, everyone was like, "Oh, BlackBerry."
Did we ever see a white one?
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Oh.
yeah. The back of one.
Well, we never. Oh. Okay.
Because it would have been white privilege, and that's just not a good not a good marketing gimmick. So that's
For a long time. I'm like, what phone you rocking? Yeah, that white privilege.
That white privilege. It's funny. It would have been like a pearl or some BS like white off color, if it ever did come out.
Here's all I know is that Ron was on stage and he introduced both of them and he had one, and basically we all know those devices at that point in time were fake. However, I also know that when I went to pick up one of my Privs for the review at that point in time, he had a white one at that point as well, and it was legit. It was real. He never let anybody touch it. He never let anybody fully see it. All he did was just open up his coat pocket, and he had a white one inside his coat pocket. And where it went after that, I have no idea. I'm sticking with the white privilege story because honestly, it kind of makes sense. Like, maybe they realize that and like we're like, oh man, we can't release a phone that stands for privacy and privilege. That's white, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like Donald Trump's phone through and through.
I mean, realistically though, it was probably they just didn't sell enough to, or if there's like enough hype, you know, then that's where you can start having different variants and things. But I don't think
I don't know, man. But that arguably that's how you create hype. I mean, that's how they've done it in the past.
Right, just like Chick-fil-A closes on Sunday, BlackBerry holds out on a white device for 8 months plus. Yeah, that's just how it goes. Not a good correlation, no.
Hey, it worked for me, buddy.
Everyone's like, "What's Chick-fil-A?" All you Canadians like, "What? What is James talking about?" I think Alex is basically Canadian too.
We have Chick-fil-A here.
Do we?
Toronto has a Chick-fil-A.
It must be in Toronto.
Yeah.
Toronto has everything that I want that I can't have in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Like Chipotle. Can't have no Chipotle out here. That's what I'm gonna do, man. I need to find a bunch of people who will give me a bunch of capital so that I can open up a bunch of franchises that are mostly considered U.S. franchises within the Nova Scotia area. I'll be balling rich at that point.
I can see Blaze opening up like one of each.
Man,
Just,
I want
at least 7 so he has somewhere to eat every day.
Blaze becomes a fast food
burger, Chipotle. Bring it all to Nova Scotia.
Blaze is gonna get jacked, y'all. Let me tell you. He's gonna be lifting up the BlackBerry radar like cargo freights on his own soon. I want to thank everyone who's been continuing to support and listen to us over the past 2 years. You guys are the reason we come and do this. Not only is it slightly therapeutic for us, but we're glad to share and kind of refocus the dialogue around BlackBerry in a more cohesive and consistent way. We're going to continue working on some special guests in the future. I've been lining up some talks, so that's good. So you guys will be seeing a little bit more. Do you guys want to talk about this this image I posted on the channel? You know what? We're not even going to mention you guys here. Let's jump into this after show, gentlemen. Our Patreon subscribers, you can hop on with us if you want to join. I'm going to put out the live links for you guys and as well the join links. So come join us on the after show. Let's go chit-chat it up about Brandon's whiskey. Never mind. That's not appropriate.